questions. Doesn't the Community Development District have the availability of long-range, short-term for specific needs underneath the Florida statutes?
Yeah, it has the availability to do that. It's just a matter of is there a financial institution willing to do it, and
Correct.
the district would still need, presumably the bank would be requiring an assessment, just like an assessment for a long-term bond, an assessment that's going to pay off.
Yeah, tax
Would
anticipation.
still be required to follow much of the process I described as it relates to levying an assessment to secure whether it's a long-term or short-term loan. And one of the things that I haven't discussed, but just I think I've discussed with some board members is, in best case scenario, you borrow more money than you need because you are able to recover everything from the contractors, or because the amount of material you need is less than contemplated and you get savings that way. The money that you do not use that would remain in your construction account would then be used to redeem or pay down the principal amount of the bond, which would result in a reduction of the amount of debt allocated to each home for the project.
Correct. One last thing, you brought up the issue about maintenance. If I remember correctly, I think the Homeowners Association over the years was billed for maintenance of the riprap. At one point they were talking about, I think last year, about $70,000 for that maintenance. That practice is still acceptable?
Yeah, so ultimately, the responsibility for the stormwater system falls with the CDD, but the CDD has the right to determine the manner in which it maintains the improvement. So at this point, the CDD has an agreement with the HOA, whereby the HOA is responsible for maintenance. If for some reason the CDD chose to go about it a different way, like enter into a contract with a different entity, a lake maintenance company, for that maintenance. But to the extent that there are issues with respect to that maintenance, it's really the CDD's obligation to correct those issues and make sure it's being properly maintained. But with I use the term maintenance with respect to a line item added to the budget, really because it's commonly referred to as an operation and maintenance assessment. But it's been a while since I've looked at that agreement, but I think that agreement excludes the types of repairs that we're talking about resulting from the storm. So I don't think that that's something that's contemplated by the agreement with the HOA, the types of repairs we're talking about to the phase one improvement.
Yeah, I was more concerned about going forward after everything is completed. There's still going to be maintenance requirements down the road. Hopefully not going to be quite as expensive, given the fact that I think this will be a much more secure structure that will be put up. But it'll be something that we'll have to take a look at. And I think the engineer will do it on an annual basis, a review, which Josh has been doing in the past. Did we do one this year?
No, not this year.
Not yet.
But we do it right about now. We wait for
Right.
the water level to go as low as possible so we can see as much of the exposed lake.
Okay.
So to summarize where we are, is number one, we need to finish the estimates for phase two, make sure we have all of our numbers correct to come up with a number for phase two for the bond issue. Number two, we need to find out as quickly as possible, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, a phase one repair ballpark estimate so that we can include that in the bond issue. And I think we've identified here enough mechanisms such that if we do need a small amount more going forward, after the project's complete, we have another set of options to draw on for funding outside the bond option so we don't have to incur those onerous costs associated with the bond issue. I think that sounds good, and Mike has informed me we don't need a motion to get that all in order, but so basically Josh, you and I will work together on finalizing those two estimates. And
let me add too, I think, in terms of the number that Clark is given for, we have to stick with that larger number, because we do have the option, if if we do get the larger number, I don't think, in other words, I don't think we have to wait a week or 2 weeks to go into negotiations. If we save money, we save it. But for the bond issue, we need to make sure we have a quality assurance number, we have the manager for construction management number. We use the larger number that's been already accepted, contingent upon approval of other things. And we just move as quickly as we can to get Clark here at this next meeting. And I think we need to, if we need to return to if there's any relevant information regarding the defects and negotiations, we come back to this subject, but we move on the agenda to the update from Stan, and we can always circle back to this. There may be relevant information that might pertain to this.
I know that we've already discussed some of the items that would be in number 2, which is an update, in number 1 regarding the financials for phase 2. The last thing that I'll say on that item before we move on is that the numbers that Clark has already kind of been preliminary using with the bank to kind of get a comfort level with them, he's been using a higher quality number for construction, and he's been using, I think, approximately $200,000 of additional construction funds for the various quality managers and such. I don't know, I don't think he's been using any number for the phase 1 defect. So that would be really a primary number that we're going to need. That could change what he's been using, and I don't know if the 200,000 is going to be sufficient or not yet. So those are just kind of the ballpark numbers he's been using up to this point. So that's what we'll be. All right, so moving on to number 3, Mr. Holman, regarding the, I'm sorry, I forgot. We had a request earlier when we were doing, when Josh was discussing the repairs and what have you, the proposals, to also give us an update on the FEMA. Is there any update regarding FEMA funding, or FEMA, I heard last meeting we were looking at being very close to having an obligation from FEMA. Do we got anything further with that?
Yes, and that checklist that I've been using, I'm going to provide to the board at every board meeting with an update to that, along with an attachment of what I provided to FEMA in that last timeline. And that's being passed on to the board. There's a couple extra copies there, and I can email this to you also. But last time we were here, we were working on the EHP review, environmental hazard protection, and that has been completed. We provided them about 4 or 5 deliverables in order to get to that progress point. Now we're in the PDMG review, which is the project manager. That's John Holm, that I've worked with for almost a year and a half, and he's been monitoring the project as it went along and checked every box. So that's more of a box to check. The next big step is it's going to go to FEMA for final review because it's classified as a large project. And basically, that's just FEMA reviewing. Everyone else so far that's reviewed, there's been an outsourced sub-consultant to FEMA. FEMA gets the full package when it goes to FEMA review after the project manager reviews it, and they just double check that the package is complete. There's one, I got a request yesterday for some clarification on the coordinate points that was in the map that's attached, so I'm going to get that to them today. And I believe it will, between now and the time we next meet, it will be sent up to FEMA for their final review.
Josh, in the meeting that I attended yesterday, I heard a comment from a Heritage Bay CED member. Basically, his comment was that the chances of obtaining funding, actual dollars, from FEMA are very low. You may be granted or identified, and Laura and Cheryl, if you're here, and maybe you can help me with that.
Yeah, Laura had to leave, but you're exactly right.
So even though you're identified or slated, the actual monies that you may obtain from FEMA are going to be very low. Do you have any comment about that? Do you have any historical support for the fact that this, for instance, $600,000 we've been slated will ever actually be given to the quarry, CDD, for reimbursement?
Nope. I mean, we're going through a process with FEMA, and my understanding is the next step after FEMA reviews it, the money gets obligated and sent to the state. So to the extent the state doesn't give us the money, I certainly accept that as a possibility.
You have the term correct, obligated, so.
Maybe this gentleman hadn't got money obligated from FEMA, I don't know.
We've been obligated 600,000, but you're right. What the Heritage Bay supervisor was stating is that even though it's obligated, the chances of the state releasing is actually very low due to priorities or whatever.
All I can say is very inconsistent with everything I've been told through this year-and-a-half-long process.
Okay. And I'll comment on SDS's history. We've had, obviously Florida's had numerous hurricanes over the last decade or so. We manage 80, 90 plus districts all across the state of Florida. We've had multiple FEMA requests for reimbursements for hurricane damage in other communities. Typically, it is a long and arduous process. It is very detailed. There are lots of, as Josh can attain, there are lots of different steps, lots of different people who have to hold these things. We've never gotten to the process of being obligated and not receive money. But I will remind everybody that FEMA is still quasi-political. There are entities that believe that money should be used more freely and people who believe that their money should not be used as freely as they are, and politics can sometimes hold these things up. We've had districts where it's gone 2 to 3 years after we've gone through all the processes before we actually got the money. We did get the money, but it took a long time before we actually got the money, mainly due to changeover in personnel, election cycles, people coming in and going out, what have you. I can say that we don't typically get 100% of the cost to repair our items. Our historical has more been in the 80% range of what we actually receive versus what we spent to do the work, if you kind of average our different projects. But I've never been obligated and not received a dollar.
Yeah, 75.
75% is what I've been told with FEMA for reimbursement, and then because of our mitigation project, we get a potential additional 12.5% from the state of Florida. But I've heard about a wall in Texas too, so you get money that we can pull.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask for your appointment of one of these supervisors at this table to be the FEMA point person who injects themselves in the process, has direct contact with FEMA, that can be Josh's support in Josh's departure.
Also, Kathleen has been one of contact so far with John Holman and has been helping in our regional.
So Kathleen's involved in the process, but this is pretty important to us. I think it rises to the level of one of our supervisors taking ownership of this and being side by side in the process.
The only comment I would make to that is we did add under additions and deletions, we did add that we are going to be nominating, that there's going to be a nomination for a 5th board member. Before we start deciding all these different items, we might want to wait until after we appoint that board member, because that person may be a good option.
The other thing, and I'm fine with that, so the other request I would make, Josh, is that if you date the milestones on this report, I don't want you to go back, but to the degree that things happen this past month, date when it gets turned over, because I can't tell if these have been done last month, last year, 2 years ago, so it's helpful to see the progress date-wise. And I'm troubled by the remarks of the Heritage Bay CDD member, given the time we spent and the hopes that we've developed, expecting some reimbursement. So that's why first-hand knowledge, I think, is important for one of us. Are we ready for a phase 1 report? So in advance of that, I think that 3 or 4 months ago, the community at large was worried about the results of phase 1 and what the intent was for its remedy. And the comments from the public were, among others, why do we live with a substandard shoreline when phase 2 folks are going to get a new updated shoreline? And what would be the status of a phase 1, and now we call it a phase 3 project? And while we've talked about it, I don't know that we've affirmed as a board that it is our intent to do a phase 3 repair of the phase 1 shoreline by anything more than our discussion. And I would want us to, whether it needs a vote or a nod of the head, to give the public comfort that we're going to do that. And we've talked about how we're going to fund it, but I don't think there's been any declaration that that is what we're going to do. So I personally think that the questions I've gotten from the folks in the public is, you've talked about it, but I haven't heard that you're going to do it. So I would, whether it rises to the level of emotion, but absent settlement issues, absent funding, absent negotiation with quality to add phase 3 as a change order. There's a lot of ifs out there, but I believe it's certainly my intent as one supervisor, and I think most of the supervisors feel that we want to get this lake improved equally across the board so that everyone benefits the same. So, again, I don't know if it's a nod, but I'd like to affirm that that's our belief, so that we're single-minded in our efforts.
And at least reflect in the minutes that each one of us shares that belief. And I'll say, in the last week, I toured the lake on my jet ski, and the inconsistencies in the aesthetics alone are appalling from the water. It looks like crap, I'm sorry. And we gotta fix it. And whoever comes in to do phase 2, I would hate to see a patchwork quilt of ill-repaired areas, good areas. This has to be done consistently. And you have my commitment that I'm going to do everything I can. I'm not personally laying the rocks, but I'll do whatever I can to make sure that this community is restored to the beauty and the structural integrity that it should be. And those are my words, Stan.
I don't think there's anything wrong. We've had various motions over the last couple of meetings about going into negotiations and what have you, but I think what I hear from you, and I believe it's correct, I'd have to go back and look at the meetings I wasn't at, but I don't know that there's been a motion from the board to say that we are going to make the repairs regardless of the results of the negotiation. So if you just kind of, to make it official, want to make a motion that says the intent of this board is to make all repairs, even phase 1 defect repairs, regardless of negotiations, or recoup money from prior contractors, that's fine.
Subject to advice and counsel of Wes as to how that occurs, that is my motion.
Yeah, let's get to the discussion. I think it's a good idea, and I think everything I've heard you say and leading up to this motion should give the level of comfort you're looking for. I think worst case scenario, but to the extent I have any concern about the motion, is you're going to do everything you can what's ahead of you to get that completed.
And you've articulated the concerns that I had better than I wanted it to come out as an intent, not an obligation. And that's why I was uncertain about the need to rise to the level of emotion. I just wanted the community to see us all unified in our desire to get Phase 1 fixed in a Phase 3 project as a change order, unrelated to FEMA reimbursement, unrelated to scheduling, but it's our intent to get that done. That was my hope to convey to the public today. Thank you.
Yeah, please do it.
One of the things that I've been doing is pulling different entities, individuals, as well as groups like the QCA, to identify, what needs done. If you recall, there were even inconsistencies during Phase 1, and we brought it up in the Phase 1 engineering review that, some people didn't want rocks in front of their infinity pool, or, so I can appreciate what Wes is saying, because we need the flexibility to address individual homeowner concerns that if it's specified, but the homeowner wishes it to be different, we want to be able to make sure that we meet the specification at the same time, can address homeowner concerns about their particular property. We did that in Phase 1, and we've written it into the specification for Phase 2, so I want to make sure everybody's aware of that, and everybody is aware of the fact that we do have some variability in the ability to install Phase 2 and repair Phase 1. Does that make sense?
Stan has his report.
Thank you. The agenda item lists this as, I guess, an update on the Phase 1 negotiations. Last meeting, I was tasked with meeting with the parties that were noticed by Wes, I guess back in January and February, as to responsible parties in the Phase 1 contract that bear a responsibility for performance. Based upon the ECS report that the QCA commissioned and remarks just a moment ago, it's obvious that the Phase 1 shoreline did not come out the way we wanted to, and we want to seek redress from those parties. Due to scheduling issues, that progress is not significant, but will resume today. I have meetings today with 3 of the parties at 1 o'clock and at 2:30, so I'll better be able to report on that process and hope that we would have for some damage reimbursement at the next meeting. It dovetails into the remarks we made about finishing Phase 1 in a Phase 3 project, but very, very important. The other aspect of this report was the last meeting, in discussions about the process of settling. While I consider myself somewhat experienced in those areas, I am not aware, and I wanted the benefit of counsel in terms of certain terms and conditions and boundaries of a settlement. And Wes suggested that the board consider retaining construction litigation specialists. And with Wes's firm's help and my own research, I spoke to 3 different law firms in Naples, all of whom had specific specialties in construction litigation. Spoke to them about who would be the party that would represent us, what the rates were for that party, what the rates were for the support for that individual, availability, and then examples of projects and experiences. Did a little reference checking, but not as much as I'd like. But I do have a recommendation for the board for the firm of Grant, Fridkin, and Pearson here in Naples, with the primary contact attorney being Michael Traficante. I've received from him a proposed retainer agreement that would bind him to us, allow him to then give us legal advice. Until a lawyer is retained, he's somewhat restricted from offering legal advice to a potential client. While I've had discussions with them about our specifics, they've been very narrowly focused so as not to breach that line. His agreement is for a $2,500 deposit, not a retainer. Oftentimes the word retainers are used differently, where they are basically, here's a payment to engage us that is non-refundable. Other people call that retainer a refundable payment off of the last invoice. This particular deposit is that. It's a deposit against a payment against the final invoice. My hopes are that we would settle this without any legal expenses, but for oversight of any agreements. We certainly don't want to have any warranties, latent defects exempted from any settlement that we would make. So it's that knowledge that I have and his advice, not legal advice, his suggestions to me, that we need to be certain that we're protected on and the end game should we come to an acceptable settlement with these parties. So I'm asking the board to authorize that agreement with the necessary $2,500 payment in order that we have counsel available to us as we commence with these settlement discussions this afternoon. Additional meetings will be forthcoming with other parties, but hopefully we'll make some progress today. I'm hopeful and optimistic, but I'm also a realist, and I just don't think it's going to happen that quickly and that easily. We don't want to settle too quickly for fear that we wouldn't get what we're due. So it's a process that you have to take in order to get your due. So that's my report, and that's my request that the board consider the retaining of that law firm that I mentioned earlier.
Do you have a copy
I do.
with you, or it's up to you?
I might.
Okay. If you can email it to me. That's fine.
I can email it to you as we sit here. I think I may have a copy in here, but I just got off the plane a couple hours ago, so I'm not sure.
That's fine. I'll just need it for the record. And what was the full name of the firm again?
Grant, Fritkin, and Pearson.
Yes, Grant, G-R-A-N-T, Fritkin, F-R-I-D-K-E-N, Pearson, P-E-A-R-S-O-N.
So in that case, then we would look for a motion to accept the Grant Fritkin Pearson agreement and authorize the $2,500 deposit to be paid to that firm. Do we have a motion to that effect?
One question.
Sure.
Would they join you in any discussions today that quickly, or
We don't want counsel present, because if we have counsel, they'll have counsel. And avoiding...
But you'll be able to consult him following?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I move that we approve that. And actually, our legal budget, we're under budget for the year, so.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries. All right. Seeing nothing further for that item, let's move to item number 3, update regarding the status of requiring a construction. Oh, so, well, I got it. Yeah, that kind of takes care of it. Sorry. Committees. Yes. We're now looking for discussion regarding designating specific committees.
Seem to have lost quite a few attendees. What I wanted to announce was that the board intends to develop specific committees to assist the board with expertise in certain areas. And what we are specifically planning to do is establish 3 subcommittees or committees reporting to the board. And those are committees for finance, engineering and maintenance, and strategic planning. And I've already discussed the importance of all 3 with individuals as well as organizations like the QCA and the Golf Club, because all of us are in this together. Especially with strategic planning, it's important that all 3 groups be represented, Golf Club and the QCA, as well as the CDD, in identifying key issues that affect us all and that eventually will need to be remediated, improved, etc. So I ask everyone here to consider applying for a position on one of the 3 committees. Today is an announcement, and by virtue of the publication of the minutes, we'll be announcing the establishment of the committees. And please contact anyone on the board or SDS to inquire about those positions. And what we'll be doing in the next couple of weeks, as I mentioned, rolling the concepts out by virtue of minutes, and then every 2 weeks we'll be meeting. We're going to be changing the schedule so that the first week of the month, the first Monday of the month is going to be associated with committee meetings, and the third Monday of the month will be a formal board, CDD board meeting. So